because the average high is 70, but the forecast that's coming in is 50, so they average out at 60, but now you're not prepared for the fact that you could actually see a 50-degree day maybe in March. Tim, I thought this was really funny, and so I wanted to pop it up. But Brad tweeted or posted this earlier on Facebook about the cirrus clouds and how they were blocking out the sun, and I just thought it was really funny because this is a very good example of like when you see those crazy like wow, ka-chow, like, you know, wild whatever. More than likely not, if you're seeing something that looks like this with like wild words or something that just seems very dramatic, like more likely than not, you might need to double check with your local Met.
I saw a graphic the other day. It was just a map of North Carolina, and it had text that was like 130 font size, and all it said was, snow shifts. I'm like, well, what does that mean? That kind of makes me want to click it. And like, there's nothing in the video about snow for North Carolina. We don't have any snow in the forecast. I don't know what it was about. It was just like, this is our world now. So
it's like why we sometimes get frustrated with like the Farmer's Almanac, because although we like love it for like the folklore, and I know we've talked about this before, but like they'll be like wacky and wild, and it's like, what does that mean? That's so vague.
It sounds like a dating profile. That's what it sounds like.
That would be my dating profile.
Funny.
Wacky and wild for sure.
Yeah, so I don't know what to believe anymore when you go on that social media. It's only getting worse. It's probably not going to get better. Chances are, if you're watching Weather Impact live here on CNC Plus and FMY Plus, you're probably a sensible person and you're seeking out that good info. But we're not trying to pat ourselves on the back by any means. There's a lot of good people doing good stuff online all the time. But just make sure they're not talking to you in all caps. I think if you avoid the all caps and the sensational stuff, you've probably found a good source for weather information.
Yeah, and I will not say anyone specifically because I would never do that in general. But unfortunately, I do feel like sometimes we're seeing more people who maybe do work in television posting these sometimes more and more. So if it's somebody local that you really trust that isn't using these all caps, maybe trend toward them. Or, you know, if the world ends tomorrow and Brad Panovich is now the person who's saying crazy stuff that makes no sense, maybe double check that like Brittany and Brad and Tim and Chris, you know, and Claire, you know, are all saying the same thing, because you can probably, you know, that your averages are good if everybody's saying the same thing versus like one outlier going crazy. But to be clear, I do not think that would ever be Brad Panovich. He's like the last person to do that. So.
He's not here to speak for himself. We can say what we'd like. There's no such thing as a 45-day forecast. Just kind of, you know, just keep that in your mind. We'll tell it to you straight for sure.
Yeah, we won't tag anyone or call anyone out, but yeah, no 45-day forecast here. Tim, I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday, and I'll see you tomorrow.
You too.
Friday.
Sounds good.
I'm Colin Mayfield inside the Impact Studio. We will start our news coverage here from 7 to 9, beginning with CMPD's police chief going to retire by the end of the year. In fact, January 1st, it takes effect. Police Chief Johnny Jennings has been really in uniform for more than 3 decades. And in fact, Eugene Robinson, I got a chance to sit down with him and ask him some questions. So we'll go to this one-on-one interview right now.
Become the police chief. What were your goals? What were your own personal goals? And what was the landscape of Charlotte as you take over the police department?
Wow, that was a quick turnaround. So when I was announced as the police chief, it was one thought process that I had, because we've had some great police chiefs before me. And my thought process was, how do I continue doing the great work that they've done and continue some of the platforms that they've already built? Well, then when we started looking at the civil unrest and George Floyd, all of the reactions to that, I had to take a step back and say, we have to do something different. And I can't just get up and talk about the things that we've been doing, that how I'm going to continue doing them. So I had to really change my focus on what we're going to look like as a law enforcement agency, and that was an eye-opening experience for me.
That's what I would imagine. It becomes an eye-opening experience for you, because as you get in, there's a lot of things that's going to happen in it that you don't expect, that you have to go ahead and plan for.
Yeah, and really it was, when it started, I said, oh, what have I gotten myself into here? Because it was really a scary moment for not just me, but the profession across the entire country, all major city chiefs. And it wasn't until I had a major city chiefs meeting, and I talked to my colleagues from across the country, and to see that we were all dealing with about the same thing. It was a broken record going around the room talking about some of the challenges and things that you're dealing with. And that was really something that got me to where I said, okay, I'm not in this alone, and we can certainly get through it, and you have people that you can talk to. So that was a huge deal for me.
So now, as you take over, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be some in-betweens. All right, so let's start with maybe some of the challenges that you face. What were some of the major challenges that really were going to be extremely challenging?
Obviously the start of it in 2020, there were a lot of questions about law enforcement and the direction of law enforcement. It was a huge challenge, but I also accepted that, and I feel like I wanted to thrive on those challenges, because I often was told this is the worst time to be the police chief. I said, no, it's the best time to be the police chief, because now you can come in and start with a clean slate and build from that point and make it even better and come out stronger on the other side. And then, obviously there's some, then dealing with COVID on top of that, having to change the way you reach out to the community, change the way you communicate internally, change the way our officers respond to different calls for service and with the community. That was a huge challenge. But I think nothing was more challenging than April 29th of 2024, when we lost 4 brave officers that were out doing their job, and one being CMPD Joshua Iyer. That was something that was really difficult to get through, and but I couldn't be more proud of our agency and the response. We continued to keep our community safe during the toughest time in law enforcement history in North Carolina. So that was really a tragic event that we continued to do what we needed to do to keep our community safe.
Those are some of the things that keep you up at night? Because when I think about police chief, I think of someone who's a head coach, someone who's like a father figure, who's going to go ahead and take care of the fold here and has to look out for everything. So are those some of the tragedies that keep you up at night?
Oh yeah, you never want to get that phone call, and when you get the phone goes off all night anyway, but with other incidents happening. But when you get that phone call and you hear from a deputy chief or another command staff member who calls you and says we've lost someone, it is awful, and it's you bear responsibility for that. You feel like, what did I do what could I have done to make this not happen? And there's a little bit of blame that you put on yourself, knowing that knowing that you can't put that on yourself, but you do because you're the leader of this organization. And same thing when I got to call Mia Goodwin when she was in the tragic accident on the interstate. She lost her life, and to have to endure those types of incidents are just heartbreaking. And that these are officers that put their life on the line every single day. They have families, they have their brothers, sisters, mothers, cousins. I mean, it's just to see that they lose their lives way too early. It's difficult to absorb that as a police chief.
Does protocol and the way that you go ahead and try to take care of that in the future of maybe making changes, does that also enter your mind as now the police chief that, okay, we have to go ahead and rework things?
Yeah, when you have any incident that is that dramatic or sticks out that much, you have to learn from that. And if you don't learn from that, you're just idling yourself through a career, and you can't do that. So when there were a lot of changes that we've had to look at when we lose an officer or when you have a critical incident at all. You go back and you debrief and you say, what can we do better? Where could we have possibly had the outcome of this change? And that's how you continue to improve as an agency, and that's not just in the police world. I think that's in everyday world. When you have things that don't go your way, always need to look back and say, what could we have done better?
So what are some of the misconceptions that people don't know about you as they just see you as a chief and they see maybe that you come up behind the scene or you got your police officers, but they don't know what you do? What are some of the misconceptions and what would you like them to know about you?
Wow, people kind of forget that you are human, right? And so being the police chief is not who I am. Being a police chief is what I do. And so there are things outside of policing that really keep me going. And this. I'll go out and play some golf. I'll go out and fishing is probably my number one. I love going out and just fishing and getting my mind off of things. Exercise that keeps your mind clear. But at the same time, my whole philosophy is we can't take ourselves too serious. I think there's too many times in this world that we're so divisive and that we're so disrespectful towards other people, and I've seen way too much of that in this career. But at the same time, we look at when we come to our meetings and we talk about how we're going to continue to keep our community safe, but we're also going to laugh, we're going to joke, and we're going to make sure that work is not a bad place to be, but at the same time know what our mission is and know what we have to accomplish, and how huge of a burden it is that community safety lies on our shoulders as a law enforcement agency.
Chief, I want to pivot to some of your wins and successes.
Yeah.
So when you look over your career, what sticks out to you? Go like this, oh man, that was a great win. Oh, that was a great win for the police department.
Yeah.
Oh, that felt real, really good.
Oh, there's several, and you look at it, I can go through all of it, and one of the things that I look back to is our college internship program that I was turned down to start a college internship program back in I think it was 2018 or so, and I thought that would be a good recruiting tool, but at the time the budget it came in a little late to the game to try and even ask for it. I was persistent, came back the next year, we did a pilot, and then that went from having 6 interns to 40. We have about 40 every year, and it's one of the premier internship programs in law enforcement across the country. And so it's a pipeline to become a police officer. So that's one of the things that I can look and say, I really was persistent in wanting that to happen, and we got it done. And it's really a great tool for us to recruit within the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department now. But all kinds of things that I look at accomplishments, whether what have we done to do some work in civilianizing certain positions so we're not straining our officers for some of these everyday tasks, or civilian traffic crash units that they investigate minor collisions that our officers don't have to spend time doing that now. Traffic control, civilian traffic control officers that are out there directing traffic, where we're helping with sporting events and where we're not having an officer with a gun and a badge having to do that all the time. That frees up a lot of our individuals that are sworn and frees them up from having to have that responsibility. So there's so many things that I can continue that I can look back and say this was a great accomplishment, and one especially even being the Pretrial Integrity Act with that we had this district attorney and myself, Spencer Merriweather and myself helped work on and lobbied for, and we pushed, and we had a great team of people that were helping us with this. That there was such an issue with the revolving door of violent criminals, and we said that violent criminals should not be have a pretrial set by a magistrate. That should go in front of a judge, who that judge is accountable to his or her constituents, and that it's known who that judge is. And so we were able to get that, and just those are things that are going to continue on even long after I leave.
I remember as we were here before, early in the year, one of your police officers received a car from the Hyundai Hometown Hero program.
Yeah.
And I remember asking you that, like, what does it mean for the police unit? And that he had just come back, and he was maybe on leave, and he had gotten hurt. And I seen all the police officers outside here, right there, and they were all clapping and beaming this and that.
Yeah.
And then you came out, and I saw this big smile on your face.
Yeah.
What did that smile say?
It just shows, one, the love that we have for each other within this agency. We always talk about we're family, but it also shows the love that the community has for what we do. And sometimes it just we need to be reminded of that. So when you see something to where here's an officer who was injured in the line of duty, sacrificed so much for this.
We're going to take a quick 2-minute break and come back to this interview with the chief right after this. And we are back. We're going to go back to this one-on-one interview with Eugene Robinson and Chief Johnny Jennings.
It is not even the vehicle. It's the matter of the appreciation for his sacrifice and what he's done, and that just makes me happy to see that those things demonstrate how much the community cares.
I want to pivot to your retirement here as you start to retire. When we think about retirement, because I'm thinking as a football player, I retired, man, I'm never doing this again at all. So you're not going to be doing this. But how will retirement look for your family first and for you?
Well, and I think you kind of played on words there a little bit, family first, right? Because when you do this job, and it's not just as the police chief, but for many, many years, it's been very difficult and very challenging to put your family first. And so to be able to now, my 3 boys are grown and they're adults now and they're on their own, and so my wife and I are empty nesters, but it's going to allow us time to even do things with them that we haven't been able to do. And granted, I've always tried to make sure that I'm with them as much as I can when they were growing up with sporting events, and it was tough sometimes. So I'm excited now to be able to get my time back. My time is now my time again, and so I'll be able to do a lot of things, whether it's going on vacations or just stopping in to visit. I'm looking forward to that. So family is so important to me, and I'm looking forward to being able to spend more time with them.
A couple of more questions, and I'll let you go here. One, as you pivot to the new successor coming on, what do you want to leave the new successor with? And also, with the communication that has to happen, all the transparency, even like this time, and how transparent, what do you want to be the legacy about the communication, transparency with the media, transparency with the city, transparency with everyone?
Yeah. So I think that leaving on and the transition to Stella Patterson, I think is going to be as smooth as it possibly can be, because, one, we are familiar with each other. We've known each other. We've worked together for many years. And so I'm excited about passing that torch, but also the fact that she's going to have her own ideas, her own style, and that's exciting, because it brings a little change of the game within the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, and that's going to be a healthy change. So, my hope is I'll be here if she needs me. She knows I'm a phone call away. We'll have about a month here to transition and do some introductions and things like that, but it's going to be a good time, a good transition, and I'm excited for her. Yeah, it was another part of it.
We don't need that part. Everybody leans on you. Like, everybody's been leaning on you for like advice and this and that. Who do you lean on? Who do you guys?
Wow.
I mean, who do you like? It's like pastors. I always say this: who pastors the pastor? So who pastors the chief? Who chiefs the chief?
You know what? And I will say that's a great question, because sometimes you forget that you need to have someone too. And again, my faith is strong. I have an outstanding group of clergy that any time of the day or night I can pick up a phone call and make that, and they will answer and they will respond. And so that started from day one, early on in my career as the police chief. And so that's really been great to have that resource as well. But at the same time, there are things that you can say to other police chiefs that you may not necessarily be able to say. So we have a great network of major city chiefs that we can pick up the phone at any time, and somebody's going to answer that phone, and you can just talk and vent or whatever you want to do. But also, it's important that when I go home and I'm with my wife, that we can put all of that aside and we can be normal people, right? So and so that's what's really important, to stay mentally healthy when you have such a sacrifice in this career. So,
Chief, I want to say thank you very much for allowing me this time to go ahead and sit down here and chill with you, and just for you to go ahead and I'm gonna just bare your soul. Like, there's a lot that's in there that have to unpack. There's a lot, but there's a lot that people don't get a chance to know about you and know about the nuances of the job that you do. And I want to say, from me to you, thank you very much for your service. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Eugene. Appreciate you.
No doubt.
All right. Yeah.
And I mean that too. You know that,
No, I
right?
know that. Yeah, you wouldn't say that for nothing.
I mean that. I don't even know if I got all the questions in there, but I don't care. What do you think, Pierre, about the interview?
Anything?
Anything?
You good?
Yeah.
I loved your who chiefs the chief question.
I want to know who chiefs the chief.
You good? You stumped me on that one. I was like, I don't know.
Who chiefs the chief? Yeah. Who
That's a great question, man.
Who
Yeah.
chiefs the chief? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. 'Cause
And I love how you correlated with the pastors. You know, like that's the same thing. So,
I remember asking the pastor that, right? He's always got giving. And one day I saw him had a tear in his eye.
Oh, thank you.
And I said, man, pastor, who helps you? Who's there for you? Right? And he was like this. He said, not too many people. And I told him, I said,
That's true.
I'm going to be one of those guys behind the scene
Yeah.
that has your back. If you need
Yeah.
me for anything, I'm there for you.
And that's a good point, because you say that, and it's true. There's not many people, and sometimes you got to have those people that are going to just be straight up honest and be there when you need to talk. Be honest about things that you're either doing or you're going through. And
You got to have thick skin.
oh gosh,
Woo.
yeah.
I think we're done. We don't have anything else, right?
Good.
I just want to make sure I just did all my little thing.
You good?
Just quickly, transparency. How can the police department be? I'm talking about transparency. Let me make sure.
Yeah.
How can the police department be more transparent with the community and media? Okay, that was it. All right.
Gotcha. Yeah. Sometimes when you talk about transparency, and that's one of the buzzwords that we've seen throughout my career, basically, and sometimes there's information that you really can't put out, and we're in a world and society right now to where you have to have immediate satisfaction, immediate information, and I think social media has driven that, and news and how you get your news has totally changed. And it used to be you'd wait till 6 o'clock in the evening and you'd catch up on everything that's happened. Now it's within minutes, and so there are certain times that you might be looking at you might be investigating something, or something happened, and you can't put certain things. It really could jeopardize the investigation and the end game that you're trying to accomplish, and it's difficult for the public at times to understand that. And I've always had the concept of, we're going to put it out when we can put it out, whether it's good or bad. I don't think you've ever seen me try to sugarcoat anything, or you've never seen me hide from something that's going to look bad on our agency. We're going to put it out, and I'll stand in front of the podium, and I'll take whatever it is that needs to be given, because we're never perfect. And I've said that from July of 2020, that until you have robots doing this job, you're not going to have a perfect profession. But I do feel sometimes there are a lot of imperfect people that expect perfection out of other people. And so we have to be able to get through that. But our goal is to be perfect, even though we know we're going to fall at times. And then when we fall, you have to be accountable for that, and you have to stand up and admit where you went wrong. And then that's probably one of the most difficult parts of the job, because people will claim you're not being transparent when you're really trying to make sure that you have the integrity of the investigation, that whatever you're doing. So.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break. But before we go, in the next 10 to 15 minutes, we're going to have a live interview from a lawyer who's representing someone who was caught up in the recent CBP operations here in Charlotte. We'll get more information from them, how that person is doing, and obviously their perspective on the incident. We have video to show you as well. We'll see you back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. Over the last couple of days or so, we've seen numerous protests from students across CMS as a whole and across Charlotte. Specifically, though, in South Mech just today, we saw students walk out of school there after getting permission from their principal to do so and obviously show their actions in their own way after what they've seen here happen in Charlotte because of CBP. We're going to go to an interview with a student from South Mech right now expressing their perspective and why they chose to walk out earlier today.
Thank you all for coming, by the way. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, no, you're all good. Yeah. I'm just really happy we got press here. That's really important.
Okay, now everybody ready? Easiest question first, if you wouldn't mind just saying and spelling your name and telling us what grade you're in, please.
Yeah, of course. I'm Chase Jordan Fancher. That's CHASE JORDAN hyphen FANCHER. I'm a senior here at South Mecklenburg High School.
Just tell us, what's going on today and why you felt the need to organize today's walkout.
Yes, well, I'm sure a lot of you know that the 21,000 students have not shown up in CMS schools all across the district. And we've just noticed a really dramatic change as ICE raids have continued to get a lot worse within our community. So after seeing several other schools start protests, we decided to do the same. And our student-led speakers are just really passionate about this movement, and we really want to make a change here.
I mean, talk about what it's like at school. Are you noticing like half classmates showing up? What's the vibe like at South Mech right now?
Yes, we have a very large immigrant population here at South Mecklenburg High School. We had a lot of classrooms. My sister, she told me there was a classroom full of 30 students around there, and today, and yesterday, there was around 5 kids who showed up. So there was a very dramatic difference. We had a significant less students just show up in general as well.
And we know the district said, I think it was actually 30,000 on Monday that didn't show up, 25,000 Tuesday. We are starting to see kids come back to school. So for those of you that are choosing to attend, why is the walkout so important to you all? Is it a show of support? Is it disappointment with what's happening in the community? Why is this walkout so important to you?
Yeah, there's actually multiple reasons. Just to show that we care is a big part of it. I think a lot of students I've heard don't understand the impact that this really will have. It is not about just knowing that we have the opportunity to make change and that we care enough about the people of Charlotte and the students of Charlotte to make this protest happen.
And how many students are you expecting to join today's movement?
We definitely expect at least a few hundred students to gather around. We have sent announcements throughout our Canvas, and we've sent it throughout the PA system, which will be announced in a little bit. And we've just posted about it a lot on social media, and we're just very excited for the protest.
It seems like we've gone to other walkouts. It seems like the schools are supportive and they're letting you guys do this.
Yes.
You're obviously talking with us today. Talk about just how supported you feel either by your school or by the district with these walkouts.
Yeah, we feel very supported by the school and the district. We were able to get this approved, thankfully. We had to, initially, a lot of people wanted to do an unofficial protest, and we had to go get approved by our principal, Mark Anger, and he was able to get this approved for us so we could actually congregate today. And I feel very supported by my school and my districts.
What's your message to your fellow students who may be immigrants or may not be immigrants? What is your message to them as these raids continue?
My message is that this is a time for unity. We all need to be together. We are a very diverse school and a very diverse country. I think that we all need to just be ready for ICE and anything that they can do to all of us, because we are all victims of this and we all can be targeted. So I think that right now is a time for unity, and that's just what this message is supposed to be.
Good?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chase. We celebrate.
All right, interesting to hear his perspective. And of course, we've seen these protests, and I'm guessing they will continue as long as we see the operations continue here in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area. We're going to go to a 2-minute break, and on the other side, we do have this attorney, Javier de Janon, who is representing his client who apparently got swept up in the immigration operation enforcement that we've seen with CBP. We'll get more information and his perspective after this 2-minute break. We are back. Thanks for joining us here again inside the Impact Studio on WCNC Plus. We will get to our interviewee here in a second, attorney Javier De Janon, in 1 second. But we do want to play this video of this altercation, this event, this incident that happened with CBP. And this is the brunt of what we're going to be speaking on over the next couple of minutes. And in fact, I'll just kind of read this statement from Mr. Janon here. It says, on early morning of Sunday, 11/16, CBP officers aggressively confronted their client, Miss Heather Morrow. She was standing in solidarity with immigrants at the local Charlotte, North Carolina DHS office. Now, community members around her immediately started recording, given the documented excesses of CBP and ICE agents when they interact with the public. To no surprise to the community, an officer very quickly and violently arrested Miss Morrow, who had become concerned when another person was suddenly arrested in front of her. Yesterday, 11/19, the U.S. unsealed a federal criminal complaint, an affidavit against Ms. Morrow, accusing her of feloniously assaulting a federal officer. The Department of Justice quickly sent a press release to the media with the accusations. This case contains misinformation provided by CBP officers, they state. This is not new. DHS agents across the country have been found fabricating evidence in similar situations. We firmly contest the allegations against Ms. Morrow. We're going to play the altercation now in full.
Stop it, please do not. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Stop, stop, stop. Don't stop. Hey. What the fuck? Why would you be like that? Dude, it's our government. Name and badge number now. Name and badge number. Hey, let him go. Let him go. Let him go. Stop it. Hey. Hey. Stop it. Stop it! Get off of him! Get off of him! Quit! Quit it! Let him go! Hey! Let him go!
Well, we have Mr. Javier De Janon here with us. Javier, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Will you explain kind of what you see in this video? There's a lot of things happening, and I didn't necessarily see in this clip anybody putting their hands on or kind of getting in the way of, but can you kind of explain what you see from your client in the video there?
Yes, so happy to be here. Javier De Janon, Charlotte-based criminal defense attorney. I guess I want to start about what they're accusing Ms. Morrow of doing. And by they, I mean the federal government. So the Department of Justice very quickly released a press release, essentially, to the media, where they allege that Ms. Morrow grabbed the shoulders of CBP officers, jumped on their back, and all these other accusations, which they claim are the grounds for a felony assault on a federal law enforcement officer. We just saw the video, and that is far from what actually happened on Sunday at the DHS office. That, for us, is where this is very alarming, that the federal government, based on a report by CBP agents, pressed these felony charges against Ms. Morrow, kept her in jail overnight, and essentially altered her whole week, and hopefully not her whole life, when the video that people started recording immediately disproves the allegations. For me, videos speak for themselves, but it's clear that Ms. Morrow did not put her hands on the agent's shoulders, did not even leave the ground, and it was a matter of milliseconds before CBP agents tackled her very, very quickly. So we are concerned that even the federal government would go to the lengths of letting all media know based on false allegations.
It seems really hard to understand where the line is when you're in these type of situations, right? Whether it be the person who's being arrested or the person capturing this type of video. We've seen in two instances, even on our air, 2 American citizens who proved that they were American citizens have their vehicle windows smashed. We've seen people arrested just for even videotaping an incident like that. How can people go about, because I'll call out the governor saying earlier today that folks should be recording these incidents when they're seeing wrongdoing. So what should people know about this in terms of how to keep themselves safe and others in our community? Because, again, as the governor stated earlier yesterday, it doesn't seem like just criminals are being swept up in this operation. It seems like regular individuals, employees of businesses, just normal individuals that are trying to go to work, trying to go to school, are seemingly being detained, even if they are American citizens. So, what would you advise folks in this type of environment? We've got a lot of fear circulating, of course, and I think there's a reason why this is being done. But can you kind of expound on that?
For me, as a defense attorney who specializes in political cases, it's clear to me that what the federal government's goal is to create fear, right? Masked, militarized agents snatching people from the streets, from your car, from your place of work, from your home, is meant to instill fear. It's meant to instill fear in our communities, in our clients, in our public. And for me, the best antidote against this federal fear, the government's fear, is continuing to assemble, continuing to speak out. And since we know how CBP agents are behaving, I think it's good advice to continue recording. People have a First Amendment right to document law enforcement in this country. And to be documenting and recording, just as we saw in the video, could be the difference between a CBP officer making fabricated charges and a prosecution and the truth coming out. I also believe that it's not accidental that the agents are responding so aggressively when they're being filmed. I think a lot of legal cases and legal systems take time to develop and to resolve, but I wouldn't be surprised if a couple years from now, this country looks back to this moment with shame, with embarrassment, and with repercussions to all these CBP agents that are snatching people and that are preventing people from having First Amendment rights. I mean, it is pretty serious. I think if I were to give my advice, I think it's be careful, right? Be aware of your rights, be aware of where you're standing, of your situation, and have your networks together and in touch with you. Because if these CBP agents decide to target you next, you support system when you're out there documenting.
Oh, we had a citizen responder, or I should say watcher, even for lack of a better term, earlier on today, who witnessed her own type of altercation with CBP, just commenting about how fearful it is in these moments, even if you are on the other side of this, kind of watching this. And she had said that the 17 or 18-year-old individual, the woman that they took into custody, they had no idea where they were taking her. She had no idea where she was going. Can I ask, do you know where Miss Morrow is? It looks like from the statement that you sent us, she's still missing personal property and actually was in the Gaston County Jail at one point. Can you kind of clear some of this up?
Yes, the way people are being processed is also alarming. So what has been happening since Sunday, actually since Miss Morrow's arrest, is that if you happen to be a person with status, essentially U.S. citizen, legal permanent resident, or can prove your status otherwise, then these CBP agents send you to FBI offices. So on Sunday, Miss Morrow, after she was tackled, she was taken to the FBI. No record of where she was taken, no record in the system. I only found out she was at the FBI because I tried to find her where she was arrested, and CBP agents told me, no, she's at the FBI. At the FBI, she was handcuffed and held basically the entire day until she was transferred to Gaston County Jail, which has an agreement for federal detainees, people who are facing federal charges. And then she was held there overnight. And the next morning, she was released on an unsecured bond, which means essentially a bond that you don't have to pay. So her whole day was changed. And then, as I mentioned in our statement, her personal cell phone is still being taken from her. Tomorrow, it will finally be returned by the FBI. We don't understand why they kept her cell phone. You saw the video. The phone had nothing to do with what happened or what she was accused of. And then her car key is still missing, which now the FBI is fortunately helping us try to find. Um, since Sunday, as I mentioned, though, multiple people have been taken to the FBI offices, disappeared for a few hours, and then either come out or get federal charges. What's also very concerning for me as an attorney is that after Sunday, attorneys are no longer allowed to visit their clients when they're at that FBI building. So it seems it gets from worse to worse.
A lot of a lot of hoops to jump through, whether it's the attorney themselves or the client that they're trying to represent. Javier, can I ask, in this day and age, right, for folks that are out there, and again, I got to bring this up because not everyone feels the same way, right, in terms of these immigration operations, right? Some people feel safe from what they've seen. So I do have to ask, right, if somebody sees something, or they're involved in something, whether they're being followed by an unmarked car, whether they are stopped. This woman, like I said earlier today, was even asked when she was videoing, is she American citizen? What would you advise folks on their rights, right? I did speak to another immigration attorney earlier this week that, three big things were to know your rights, right, to keep on your person a number of ID sources and options in case you get asked, right, and to have a safety plan, to let family and friends know where you're going, where you're at, turn the location on. What else would you maybe add to those things and to try and help folks who maybe even are detained? Because in that moment, we've seen videos where folks, they are so scared to even speak. They can't even give their name. I can't imagine that. So, can you just, relay some information on how you advise folks to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, as a criminal defense attorney, my best clients, best cases are those who assert their rights, right? Who say, I do not consent to a search assertively, right? I want to speak to my lawyer, right? Who ask very quickly, very clearly, calmly, am I free to go? Am I under arrest? The answer is yes, you get out of there. If the answer is no, all right, I'm going to remain silent. I want my lawyer. I think what is so terrifying and telling about this moment in this country is that we have to remind people minding their business that there might be masked agents coming to snatch them from their vehicle, right? Like, let's really assess where we're at, how we got here, and how we can get out of here. Because I do want my community, my clients who hopefully don't become my clients, right, to be safe, to be well, to be out of harm's way, and to even have to say, always have your emergency contacts knowing you could be arrested for documenting law enforcement. I mean, that is pretty concerning to me, and I think it should be for the public. And I, like I said before, the best antidote against these excesses, the way the government is evolving, is continuing to organize and rally and support the people, especially the immigrants who are being disappeared.
Yeah, a lot is going on. And then obviously, I'm sure you saw the announcement today that ongoing operations will not be stopping anytime soon. So I guess we're in this prolonged period. So again, we'll continue to bring people the latest on the enforcement. I did want to ask, Javier, is there anything else that I didn't ask you that maybe you wanted to elaborate on or talk about, anything important that still needs to be discussed?
I think because of what happened to Miss Morrow, right? The federal government, the Department of Justice, sent a letter on their letterhead with the signature of the Attorney General's office that this is what happened, right? That this is what Miss Morrow did. This is what she's being accused of. And then there's video immediately contradicting that. We should really, really be wary of believing the federal accusations and the narrative that the government is spinning. Because if the Department of Justice is restating fabrications by their agents, then I believe that we should really be skeptical of other statements, other false truths, and so on. So yeah, unfortunately, it's even more important to be aware and check your sources. And just with what happened with Miss Morrow, a DOJ statement to the media might no longer be a reliable source.
Well, and it could be an avalanche of mistruths as well at that point. So tough to break through the subterfuge at that point in time. Mr. Javier De Hanon, we certainly appreciate your time tonight. Please update us on your client's status, if you would, so we can continue to let the public know, and obviously to keep everyone, just abreast of the situation. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for covering this.
No problem. All right, folks, we're going to take a 2-minute break. We'll be back after this. Thanks for joining us again here on WCNC Plus, guys. We're going to go to this White House press briefing with Caroline Levitt.
Body. I brought a very special guest with me today, as you can see, Secretary McMahon. So I will begin my remarks. She's going to speak, and then we'll take some questions. She'll take questions, and I'll take questions from you as well. First off, yesterday, First Lady Melania Trump and Second Lady Usha Vance traveled to Marine Corps Air Station New River and Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, where they spent the day meeting with students, educators, military families, and United States Marines. Both the First Lady and Second Lady were grateful for the warm welcome and remain deeply committed to supporting military families and the communities that serve our great nation. May God bless all of them. In economic news, the September jobs report showed the American economy remains strong, with 119,000 new jobs added, more than double expectations. These gains came after the summer passage of President Trump's historic tax cuts and multiple big trade deals with countries around the world. In particular, construction jobs surged by 19,000 in September, the largest monthly gain in a year. Nearly all of this solid monthly job growth came from the private sector and went to Americans rather than foreign-born workers, the opposite of what we saw under the previous administration. Inflation also remains under control, and wages are up by 3.8% over the year for American workers because of President Trump's pro-growth policies. In fact, real wages are on pace to increase roughly $1,200 for the average worker this year under President Trump. This is a complete reversal of the failed Biden era, when we saw inflation skyrocket to 9%, causing private sector workers to see their wages decline by approximately $3,000. We know that Americans are still hurting from the 4-decade high inflation caused by Joe Biden and the Democrats, but President President Trump is making significant progress to fix this, and he will not stop working until he solves it. As the president recently stated, he is never satisfied. For example, President Trump's policies are working to make Americans' Thanksgiving more affordable this year, from their commute to the dinner table. Nearly 100 million Americans are expected to drive next week to spend time with loved ones for the holiday. And thanks to President Trump's Drill Baby Drill agenda, the national average price of a gallon of gas on Thanksgiving Day is projected to be at the cheapest price since the COVID pandemic in 2021. President Trump is bringing down gas prices and providing significant savings to American families at the pump. And again, we expect those prices to continue to decline. According to the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual survey, cooking Thanksgiving dinner will also cost less this year than it did last year and is down about 5% overall. The average price for a staple of the meal, a 16-pound frozen turkey, is down more than 16% from last year, which will provide critical savings for families and their budgets. President Trump's entire economic agenda is aimed at putting more money back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. That's why he signed the largest middle tax cuts in history into law, from no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, to no tax on Social Security. And according to a new study from Piper Sandler, which is out this week, tax filers can expect an extra $1,000 bump to their tax refund next year, and what could be a record-breaking tax refund season. So there is more good news to come. We know these refunds will make a huge difference for Americans to help pay down their bills and use towards life's expenses. In other news this week, President Trump took a significant step toward delivering on a core campaign promise to finally close the Department of Education. To shrink the bloated federal bureaucracy, the Department of Education just entered into new interagency agreements with 4 agencies: the Departments of Labor, Interior, Health and Human Services, and State. These agencies will now ensure the delivery of legally required programs while also refocusing them to better serve students. This common sense action brings the Trump administration much closer to finally returning education where it belongs, at the state and local level, not in Washington, D.C. The Democrats' reckless 43-day government shutdown did manage to do one valuable thing. It proved that America does not need a federal Department of Education. During the longest shutdown in history, the Department of Education furloughed 90% of its staff, and America's education system was not impacted whatsoever. Schools stayed fully open across the country. Students attended class and received normal in-person instruction, and our wonderful teachers received their paychecks uninterrupted. The Democrats' government shutdown made it painfully obvious that American families do not need the Department of Education. Since its creation in 1979 during the Carter administration, the Department of Ed has spent over $3 trillion taxpayer dollars without improving student achievement. Despite pure pupil spending having increased by more than 245% since the 1970s, math and reading scores are down in public schools. In fact, the most recent Nation's Report Card from 2024 showed that 13-year-olds' math scores are the lowest they've been in decades, and their reading scores are the lowest since testing began more than 30 years ago. It's clear that throwing more money at a broken system does not work, and that's why President Trump appointed the amazing leader behind me, our Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, who is making these monumental changes at the direction of the President. We're very grateful to have you here today to talk about these changes and then take some questions. Hopefully folks in this room will have some questions on the very important topic of education. So please, Mrs. Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Caroline. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today, and thank all of you for being here as well. My purpose here is to speak directly to the American families, not just you, but to the American families, about the work this administration is doing in education to reverse our national decline with a hard reset of our educational system. That reset was a top campaign promise from President Trump to send education back to the states and end Washington's micromanagement of education once and for all. This week we took the most decisive steps thus far to make good on this promise to you. We have linked 6 groundbreaking partnerships with other federal agencies to delegate education department programs that are redundant with existing programs at Labor, State, Interior, and HHS. These interagency agreements to cut our own bureaucratic bloat are a key step in our efforts to shift educational authority from Washington, D.C. to your state education agency, your local superintendent, your local school board, entities that are accountable to you, and we encourage parents to always be involved. Cutting federal bureaucracy is never a popular move among D.C. insiders. A chorus of anti-Trump voices have come out of the woodwork to complain that we are defunding education, harming students, or acting without a plan. This could not be further from the truth. The majority of Americans across the country handed to President Trump the popular vote precisely because they have seen the brokenness of a top-down education system run by the federal government. They're painfully aware that only 3 out of 10 students can read proficiently at their grade level. They know that college students are collectively $1.7 trillion in debt, and less than half of college graduates get a job that actually uses the degree which they studied so hard to get. They see more teachers than ever before leaving the profession due to burnout, over-regulation, and lack of autonomy in the classroom. Anti-Trump voices are stirring up fear that returning education to the states is a draconian action. When Americans hear that we are shutting down the department, but given no other details, 51% oppose it. But when those same Americans are informed of our plans to preserve important elements of our work in other federal agencies and to maintain the K-12 funding that is distributed to the states, that number flips to an even greater majority at 56%. They support returning education to the states and breaking up the bureaucracy. That's because the Department of Education is a pass-through entity. It doesn't educate a single student. The money it sends to states for education can be sent directly without waste. The Democrats' government shutdown proved that without a doubt, and I'll reiterate what you said, that the Department of Education was not necessary during the shutdown. Now, this is what I've seen already on my 50-state tour that I've embarked on. Educators are innovating in their schools. States are customizing their budgets and standards, and post-secondary institutions are planning for the economy of the future. But we're not leading them. They are informing us. That's why our final mission as a department is to fully empower states to carry the torch of our educational renaissance. Education is local. It should be overseen locally by those who best know local needs. We're not ending federal support for education. We are ending federal micromanagement and paving the way for education renewal through state reforms like school choice, the science of reading, and restoring the right priorities in higher education. President Trump promised to send education back to the states, and we're keeping that promise. America's next generation will look back on the work we've carried out, thankful for an education system that prioritizes students over bureaucracy. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Secretary, and we'll take some questions for the Secretary if you have them. Elizabeth, why don't you start?
Thank you for joining us. You announced the partnership to move some functions of the Education Department to other agencies. Are you talking to members of Congress about codifying this so that it lasts beyond the administration?
Yes, we started our conversation, and thanks very much for asking that, because there have been some reports that Congress is in the dark on this. That's clearly not true. We've been talking to, I've talked to dozens of members of Congress to explain to them exactly what we're doing, to bring them up to speed, and to say to them, look, when we have completed some of these transfers that are working incredibly well, then we will be looking to Congress to codify those, make them permanent.
Brian.
Thank you. Secretary McMahon, what is the update on the negotiations with Harvard? I know the President has publicly pointed to you as somebody who's worked on that. I think you've talked about that at length, but I'd like to understand, where are things with those negotiations with Harvard at this time?
They're ongoing negotiations, and we feel I feel very comfortable that we are getting close to having those negotiations finalized. It's been open door conversation all along.
Deanna?
Hello, Mrs. Secretary. The President recently posted about establishing a federal standard for AI. Do you know if the administration has a view on the use of AI for students in schools? And Caroline, do you know if the President personally uses AI?
I don't think so.
You can handle
I've
that
never
one.
witnessed it, so I can't attest to that.
Well, I do think AI is going to need guardrails, but I have witnessed AI firsthand. I was at the Alpha School in Austin, Texas, and the first 2 hours of every day in that school, students are learning through AI. They have their headsets on, they're in front of their screens, and the AI is really acting as like an individual tutor for those students, allowing those students that can progress faster to do that. Those who need a little catch-up, it refeeds information to them, and so after those 2 hours of learning, the basics of what they're doing in their curriculum that day, then they spend the rest of the day, I mean, they have good recess and all of that time, but then they spend the rest of the day in what are called life skills, and they're actually using the information that they've learned this morning. So I've seen some AI in action that is really proving quite beneficial.
Michael.
Thank you, Caroline. Secretary McMahon, as the Education Department continues to pare down, can you talk about taxpayer services like charter school grants and how the department will continue to assist kids with special needs?
Well, we are going to make sure that there's no interruption in getting that grant money out the door. I mean, that money is, it comes from Congress, it's appropriated by Congress, and we legally are obligated to do that. And the transitions we're starting to make, our first programs that went over to the Department of Labor, that was a few weeks ago. We actually signed the first interagency agreement, which we accomplished.
We're going to take a quick 2-minute break, guys. We'll come back to Department of Education Secretary Linda McMahon and her speech right after this. Thanks for coming back here with us. We're going to continue to go back to this White House press briefing and learn more from Linda McMahon.
And for the Perkins Act. And the really good news is that the Department of Labor has a much more sophisticated system, technology system and grant fulfilling system than the Department of Education does. As a matter of fact, our executive manager that went over with that group over to Labor said he would compare what the labor system is to education's like held together by bubble gum that is not connected to any other part. So we were able to get those grants out the door more smoothly, and states have actually better access for those systems than they do at the Department of Education. So that's a real bonus.
Take a couple couple more. Carrie, go ahead.
As far as the diversity, equity, and inclusion new regulations that came out from the administrations, a lot of schools, whether high school or even higher education is concerned, some of them are defying these new administration policies, even apparently according to a new report.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Rick.
As far as there's been a new report from the administration saying that half of medical schools are defying the administration when it comes to DEI policies. What type of action will the administration take for these schools that are defying the new DEI policies?
Well, certainly the President has been very clear, and the Department of Education has taken measures to make sure that as schools are developing, their policies, or if they have open DEI offices, they're closed, or DEI regulations and rules are stripped, from their programs, and so that will continue.
Great. We'll take one more. Go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. Secretary McMahon, my question is, since you said 3 out of 10 students are literate with regard to their reading capacity, would now the states help to improve those numbers since you have gone back to the states?
Well, what we are finding, that the states that are making great progress, it's through their own innovation. It's not coming from the Department of Education. I think the Department of Education is really misunderstood about what our function is. We don't teach one student. We have nothing to do with the curriculum that are in any states. We are a pass-through pathway from money that's appropriated by Congress to get to the states. But what we have seen in those states that have taken that initiative and they are embracing the science of reading and returning that into their school programs. Louisiana has done it. Mississippi, they call it the Mississippi Miracle, because they were I think bottom or next to last in reading proficiency in Mississippi, and now they're middle of the pack, which has been a really big jump. Florida has, Iowa has, Tennessee. But these are innovations that are done at the state level. This is not anything we're dictating, and that's why I'm saying returning education to the states where they really are already leading in their education endeavors, and 90% of their budget they provide. The federal government only provides 8 to 10% of the budget for education, so let's make sure that that grant money that's coming from the federal government is getting in their hands as efficiently as possible and getting to students. We don't want teachers having to spend their time and money in regulatory compliance. There was one superintendent chief who said to me that they had done some calculation in their state, and that for every dollar that went into the classroom in a grant, 47 cents was spent in regulatory compliance. So let's get the money into the hands of our students and our teachers. Let's raise the level of education. The other thing I'll do, and I'll quickly wrap up for you, is this 50-state tour that I have embarked on. We've done about 14 states. We've shut down a little bit during the shutdown. But what I am doing is visiting different kinds of schools, grammar schools, middle schools, high schools, micro schools, private schools, charter schools, the whole gambit. And in the end, my goal will be, as we step away and fully deliver education back to the states, is to provide them with a best practices toolkit of all of the things that I have seen around the country to say, hey, this is working. Check with these superintendents, check with these governors. And what I found a little bit is governors are a little competitive, so it's kind of nice to give some of these best practices out there. It'll work because it's already working. If we leave it with the people who are closest to the students, the president believes, as do I, the best education is that's closest to the child, and parents' involvement is critical to the success.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Linda. Thank you so much. I appreciate your coming today. Thanks for your great work. And
Thank you all very much.
A busy lady, so we'll let her get back to work. All right. Thank you again. Well, let's get to it. You guys were so calm with her. I wish you were that calm with me. We'll kick off with our new media seat, as always. Javier, why don't you start us off, and then we'll get to the rest of the room. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Javier Negre. I'm from Spain. I'm the owner of the biggest media platform in Hispanic politics, with brands like La Derecha Diario, Ida TV, or UH+ or Vicegrad in Spanish. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks for supporting the new media. Also in the Hispanic community, we try to fight against medias like Telemundo, Univision, CNN, or NBC News that are spreading fake news and attacking the ICE operations. We will premiere this Sunday the Real America's Voice, the Right News Show, the first Hispanic show against communism. and woke culture that is promoted by people like George Soros to bring common sense all over the world, like happened in New York. I have two questions for you, if you don't mind. In Mexico, the young people is protesting against President Sheinbaum. They think she's doing nothing against the cartels. Sheinbaum used the police to attack them, young people, kids, girls, and she's attacking journalists like me in a country where 150 journalists have been killed in the past years. The USA legacy media is attacking President Trump for his comments about the fake news media, while they are not publishing anything about the murders of journalists in Mexico. Why do you think they stay silent about the murders of journalists in Mexico and the attacks to businessmen like Ricardo Salinas? And my second question is, Trump said he has a plan for the narco state of Venezuela. Does he have a plan for Mexico where, according to Stephen Miller, the cartels are controlling governments and territories?
Sure. Well, thank you, Javier, for the question, and thank you again for being here. We're proud to have new media voices in the briefing room. As for President Sheinbaum and the president's relationship with Mexico, I will tell you that we have seen historic strides from President Sheinbaum and her administration in Mexico when it comes to cracking down on the cartels. They have been incredibly cooperative with the president's efforts at our southern border to crack down on illegal immigration and also the illegal trafficking of drugs at the southern border. Now the president is very interested in taking additional measures against the drug cartels. He's been very clear about that. He's spoken about it, and this is a promise that he made to the American public. And so his national security team is discussing these options all of the time. And on the campaign trail, the president promised to take on the cartels. He has taken unprecedented action to do so, and he has left additional options at his disposal on the table. So those are only decisions that the president can make. Thank you.
What about the silence of the legacy media about the murders of journalists in Mexico? 150 journalists have been killed in the past years.
Yeah, well, it's certainly something I wish the media would report on more, and it's something that this administration absolutely condemns. I can't speak for the media, but I can speak for the president. That's not something he wants to see. Thank you. Sure.
Hi, thank you, Caroline. Is there anything that Mayor-elect Mamdani could say tomorrow that would ease the president's concerns about his future leadership in New York?
Look, I don't want to speak for the president or get ahead of this meeting that we are currently working on tomorrow. As you saw, the president put out a statement tomorrow that the mayor-elect will be coming to the Oval Office, and so our teams are arranging those details. I won't get into the president's thinking on it. I think you'll all hear from him directly. I also think I will just add, it speaks volumes that tomorrow we have a communist coming to the White House, because that's who the Democrat Party elected as the mayor of the largest city in the country. I think it's very telling, but I also think it speaks to the fact that President Trump is willing to meet with anyone and talk to anyone and to try to do what's right on behalf of the American people, whether they live in blue states or red states or blue cities, in a city that's becoming much more left than I think this president ever anticipated in his many years of living in New York himself. Nancy.
Thanks, Caroline. This morning, President Trump accused 6 Democratic lawmakers of seditious behavior punishable by death. Just to be clear, does the president want to execute members of Congress?
No. Let's be clear about what the president is responding to, because many in this room want to talk about the president's response, but not what brought the president to responding in this way. You have sitting members of the United States Congress who conspired together to orchestrate a video message to members of the United States military, to active duty service members, to members of the national security apparatus, encouraging them to defy the president's lawful orders. The sanctity of our military rests on the chain of command. And if that chain of command is broken, it can lead to people getting killed. It can lead to chaos. And that's what these members of Congress, who swore an oath to abide by the Constitution, are essentially encouraging. We have 1.3 active duty service members in this country, and if they hear this radical message from sitting members of Congress, that could inspire chaos, and it could incite violence, and it certainly could disrupt the chain of command. These 3 members of Congress, I will also add, knew exactly what they were doing. You look at Alyssa Slotkin, she's a former member of the CIA. Mark Kelly was a captain in the U.S. Navy. Maggie Goodlander was a naval officer, and notably, she is also the wife of Joe Biden's national security former advisor, Jake Sullivan. And so these members knew what they were doing. They were leading into their credentials as former members of our military, as veterans, as former members of the national security apparatus to signal to people serving under this commander-in-chief, Donald Trump, that you can defy him and you can betray your oath of office. That is a very, very dangerous message, and it perhaps is punishable by law. I'm not a lawyer. I'll leave that to the Department of Justice and the Department of War to decide.
But the president has frequently, but Caroline, can I just follow up? The president and the vice president, for that matter, have accused the other side of encouraging political violence. Isn't that exactly what the president is doing when he says that members of Congress should be killed?
Why aren't you talking about what these members of Congress are doing to encourage and incite violence? They are literally saying to 1.3 million active duty service members not to defy the chain of command, not to follow lawful orders.
Actually, every single can refuse an illegal order, which is
they're suggesting, Nancy, that the president has given illegal orders, which he has not. Every single order that is given to this United States military by this commander-in-chief and through this chain of command, through the Secretary of War, is lawful. And the courts have proven that. This administration has an unparalleled record at the Supreme Court because we are following the laws. We don't defy court orders. We do things by the books. And to suggest and encourage that active duty service members defy the chain of command is a very dangerous thing for sitting members of Congress to do. And they should be held accountable, and that's what the president wants to see. Phil.
Thank you. Ambassador Mike Huckabee had a meeting with Jonathan Pollard, a former U.S. citizen who was convicted and spent 3 decades in jail for selling state secrets to Israel. Did the White House know that that meeting was going to happen? Does the administration condone it?
The White House was not aware of that meeting, but the president stands by our ambassador, Mike Huckabee, and all that he's doing for the United States and Israel.
You said that the president was going to do what was right for U.S. citizens, regardless of whether they lived in blue or red states. I'm curious if there's any chance in tomorrow's meeting with Mayor-elect Mamdani that he will be able to convince the president to abandon that promise to cut off federal funding to New York City.
Look, Phil, we'll see how the meeting goes tomorrow, and I'll let the president speak for himself. Natalie.
Thank you, Caroline. What did the president mean when he called reporter piggy?
Look, the president is very frank and honest with everyone in this room. You've all seen it yourself. You've all experienced it yourselves, and I think it's one of the many reasons that the American people reelected this president, because of his frankness. And he calls out fake news when he sees it. He gets frustrated with reporters when you lie about him, when you spread fake news about him and his administration. But he also is the most transparent president in history, and he gives all of you in this room, as you all know, unprecedented access. You are in the Oval Office almost every day asking the president questions, and so I think the president being frank and open and honest to your faces, rather than hiding behind your backs, is frankly a lot more respectful than what you saw in the last administration, where you had a president who lied to your face and then didn't speak to you for weeks, and hid upstairs and didn't take your questions. So I think everyone in this room should appreciate the frankness and the openness that you get from President Trump on a near daily basis.
And
go ahead.
As a follow-up,
yes.
The Washington Post just reported that the Coast Guard has.
I'm calling on Bloomberg. Go ahead.
Caroline, thank you. 2 questions for you. The New York Times is reporting that the administration is now sending a U.S. official to the G20. They're sending Mark Dillard. Can you confirm if that is true, and then also explain the shift in?
I'd be happy to explain, because there is not a shift. The United States is not participating in official talks at the G20 in South Africa. I saw the South African president running his mouth a little bit against the United States and the president of the United States earlier today, and that language is not appreciated by the president or his team. team. The ambassador or the representative of the embassy in South Africa is simply there to recognize that the United States will be the host of the G20. They are receiving that send-off at the end of the event. They are not there to participate in official talks, despite what the South African president is falsely claiming.
On Ukraine, there have been reports that President Zelensky said, he's looking to look at the plan, that there's been reports about the Trump administration proposing a plan. Can you just give an update on where Russia-Ukraine stands, and does the president plan to speak with Zelensky anytime soon, or when can you expect that?
So I'm happy to provide an update. I've seen quite a bit of reporting on the latest with Russia-Ukraine, so let me clarify and give you guys the truth on where it currently stands. President Trump has made it very clear since day one, and even on the campaign trail, that he wants to see this war come to an end. He's grown increasingly frustrated with both sides of this war, Russia and Ukraine alike, for their refusal to commit to a peace agreement. But nevertheless, the president and his national security team are steadfast in seeing this war come to an end, to end the killing and deliver on the president's promise. Special Envoy Witkoff, Marco Rubio, have been working on a plan quietly for about the last month. They've been engaging with both sides, Russia and Ukraine, equally to understand what these countries would commit to in order to see a lasting and durable peace. That's how you get to a peace negotiation, right? That's how it worked with Israel, with respect to Israel and Gaza and all of the Arab countries in the Middle East. That's how we accomplished that historic agreement, which the UN, by the way, voted to commit to and accept this week, which was a huge monumental moment. So they have been engaged with both sides, and these talks are continuing. As always, I'm not going to litigate the details of this plan as it's ongoing and it's in flux, but the president supports this plan. It's a good plan for both Russia and Ukraine, and we believe that it should be acceptable to both sides, and we're working very hard to get it done. And I'll also add, I know Secretary Driscoll did meet with President Zelensky today. We spoke with him. He was very optimistic following that meeting, and so again, we are having good conversations with both sides with respect to ending this war.
Caroline?
Sure. Go ahead.
Follow up on Ukraine. You said this is a good plan. So according to our sources, this proposal demands major concessions from Ukraine and doesn't demand much from Russia. So was Russia involved in drafting
Your
this?
understanding is wrong. Have you read the full plan? You haven't.
Sources said.
Yes.
So if you can give details, maybe.
You've read reporting from one side of the war, and so I want you to understand that the administration has talked equally with both sides. You have seen President Trump engage directly with both President Putin and President Zelensky. Likewise, his national security team has as well. In fact, Special Envoy Witkoff and Secretary Rubio met with some of the Ukrainians just in the past week to discuss this very plan. And so just like you saw with respect to Israel and Gaza, we are hearing out both sides of this war to understand what can you commit to end the war. And that's ultimately how we are going to get to an agreeable solution. That's what the president has directed of his team. I know there's a lot of criticism out there and a lot of doubters, but I would just remind you of the historic success that this president and his team accomplished in the Middle East. We believe that is possible with Russia and Ukraine, and we're hoping and working very hard to achieve that. Stephen.
Could you provide a little more context on what to expect tomorrow with the Mamdani meeting? Will it be in the Oval Office, or is it going to be open at least partially to the press?
I don't have any more details to read out for you on the meeting quite yet, Stephen. I know it's of great interest to you in the New York Post, but we'll keep, maybe if it opens, we can commit to letting you in. Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. It came up yesterday during a confirmation hearing for the president's pick to lead the CFTC that the CFTC currently has 0 Democrat commissioners, whereas usually it's had 2 or more. Does the president plan to appoint Democrats to financial regulators like the CFTC and SEC, or does the president feel that there shouldn't be Democrat leadership at those agencies, consistent with the administration's move earlier this year to remove Democrats from the FTC and other agencies?
I'm going to be completely honest. I haven't spoken to the president about the CFTC in quite some time, but I'm happy to check in with our presidential personnel office and see if there's any updates that we can provide you there. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. Last week on Fox News, President Trump said that we've had a lot of problems
with the French. How would you describe the current relationship between France and the U.S.?
Look, the relationship remains very strong. President Trump speaks quite frequently with Emmanuel Macron. I think they have a good working relationship, but the president is not shy to point out when he has disagreements with world leaders as well, and he's done that with respect to Mr. Macron as well. Deanna, go ahead.
Caroline, there are reports that Qatar is acting as a mediator in the Ukraine peace process. Can you confirm that, and why did the president choose that country?
I'm not going to get into further details other than what I previously shared, which I think was quite a bit of information. Brian?
Thank you, Carolyn. Two questions. We were talking about earlier in this briefing about the president's orders. You were going back and forth about what the ad said and what it didn't say. My first question is
the ad,
the advertisement that the Senate Democrats were featured in. So the first question is, no matter what the order is, it could be to any administration official, military or otherwise, no matter if legal experts might think it's illegal, does the president expect those cabinet members, administration officials to go ahead with those orders regardless of any outside thinking or experts?
The president expects his cabinet officials in the administration to follow the law and to demand accountability and hold people accountable for their dangerous rhetoric. And I would just add that if this were Republican members of Congress who were encouraging members of the military and members of our United States government to defy orders from the president and from the chain of command, this entire room would be up in arms. But instead, it is the other way around, and I think that's quite telling. I'm going to let you all go because the president, excuse me, I appreciate the encouragement this afternoon, but President Trump is about to meet in minutes with Israeli hostages who this administration freed, and so I'm going to go up to that meeting, and you will hear more about that later. Thank you.
You misquoted Democrats in that video. That's actually not what they said.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break. We'll be back right after this. Back inside the WCNC Plus Impact studio, we're about to hear from Vice President Vance, who spoke with Breitbart Media a little bit earlier today on a number of topics. We'll go to this right now.
Everybody, to a very special conversation with Vice President Vance. We've got a great program for you. Before we bring the main event up, we want to thank our partners, CGCN, Alpha Institute, and we're very grateful to all our sponsors. So I want to list them real quick. American Chemistry Council, One Brief, Bitdeer, T1 Energy, RJ Reynolds, Chevron, Meta, Microsoft, Bank of America, American Petroleum Institute, American Global Strategies, and Bank Policy Institute. So now I'd like to bring to the stage Washington Bureau Chief for Breitbart News, Matt Boyle, and the Vice President of the United States, Mr. J.D. Vance.
Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Absolutely. Well, I love to be here with all of you. It's a beautiful building and a beautiful morning. I always joke with Matt, but it's actually not a joke. I'm being dead serious, that this is the most well-sourced journalist in Washington, D.C. And if you remember maybe 6 months ago, maybe it was actually a year and a half ago, when there was this big conversation in the Washington Post about what do we do to actually get in touch with the other half of America? How do we actually make our journalism more appealing to the half of the country that doesn't agree with far-left politics? And I think I texted Jeff Bezos and I said, if you're really serious about this, you should just hire Matt Boyle and make him run your entire political reporting shop. Now, Larry Soloff, I'm sure, is pissed off at me for that suggestion, but unfortunately for the Washington Post, they did not take my advice. So I'm proud to be here with Matt Boyle and Breitbart, and thanks for everything you guys do.
All right, so Mr. Vice President, the big news this morning is new jobs numbers blew away expectations.
Huge.
From the September numbers, so these were delayed because of the government shutdown, more than double. 119,000 new jobs, and then also there's some interesting stuff in the wages numbers there as well that shows wages on the rise. Your thoughts on the jobs numbers?
Okay, so a huge jobs report, and I assume the market is going crazy right now, probably just opened, because what this shows is that the Trump economic policies are actually working. And you've got 119,000 new jobs. Economists thought that we would have about 50,000 new jobs, but that's actually just a headline number. If you look below the surface, I think the numbers are actually better. So number one, wages continue to way outpace inflation. If you go back to the 3 years of the Biden administration, the average American worker actually lost about $3,000 of take-home pay. In the first 10 months of the Trump economy, we've increased take-home pay by about $1,200, adjusting for inflation. So that's a huge, huge thing, and this jobs report confirms that. You have the number of manufacturing hours worked in the economy is actually going up. You see the private sector is really driving this economic growth and is driving the job creation. And this is really important, I know, to you, Matt, but really to me, and it's that we are seeing the job growth go to native-born American citizens. And what happened under the Biden administration is, to the extent there was any job growth at all, if you looked at the data, almost all of the net job creation in the United States under the Biden administration went to the foreign-born. Now, of course, some of those people are legal immigrants to the United States, but that means that a lot of the job creation was actually going to illegal aliens who shouldn't have been in our country. The best thing you can say about the Trump economy is that American jobs are going to American workers for a change, and that's the thing that I'm proudest about with these numbers.
Right. So now, another big story is that last night President Trump announced that tomorrow he's going to be hosting a meeting with the New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. He calls him communist.
I might have sound wrong
about that. But anyway, point is that the Mamdani's rise can be attributed to his, everybody's, the new buzzword, if you will, is affordability.
Sure.
Right? So how do we, people out there feel like the economic situation isn't that great. Look, we're 10 months to the day here since the inauguration, but they want to see more. They want to see more action. We've seen a lot of steps you guys have taken. A lot of people are putting a lot of faith in what Secretary Bessent is saying, that the first half of next year the economy is going to boom because of the policies you guys have enacted. What's your message to those out there who feel like they haven't seen that gain?
Yeah, well, first, Matt, the government shutdown didn't help, to be clear. And I do think that actually pumped the brakes a little bit on all the great economic news that we were seeing. And look, the Democrats, our attitude was, why are the Democrats doing this? They're the party of government. Why are they shutting down the government? For 10 years, they said to shut down the government is an act of economic terrorism on the United States, and it's sort of a question that answers itself, because I think that they were so worried about what the Trump administration is doing that they were willing to blow the whole thing up, hold a gun to the head of the American economy in order to get what they want. And that's going to cause a little bit of damage, but I think it'll be ultimately very, very minor, because we were able to get the shutdown wrapped up. And I guess my message to the American people who are still feeling like things are unaffordable, who are still feeling like things are rough out there is look, we get it, and we hear you, and we know that there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of wood to chop because the Biden administration put us in such a very, very tough spot. And the way that I think about this is it's always helpful to take this from the abstractions to the actual real things that people are worried about. So take, for example, a dozen eggs. I'll never forget this. It was one of the very first, maybe the single first press conference that the president had done since he had started his second term. And some reporter, probably from ABC, yells at him and says, "What have you done about the price of eggs? The price of eggs are up 300% over the past 3 years." And it's like, it was January the 23rd. It's like, what do you mean, what have we done in 2 days? It's going to take a little bit of time to fix that problem. And so if you're an American who's just struggling to get by, you work hard, you pay your taxes, you want your kids to have good opportunities, and the price of eggs goes from $2 a dozen to $8 a dozen under the Biden administration, and then under the Trump administration it goes from $8 a dozen to maybe $6.50 a dozen, well, to you, that is still a major problem. And even though we've made incredible progress, we understand that there's a lot more work to do. And the thing that I'd ask for the American people is a little bit of patience. This economy was not harmed in 10 months. It took a deliberate 4-year administration that was making life harder for everyday Americans, that was importing foreign workers instead of giving jobs to American workers, that was over-regulating, over-taxing, overspending. They were doing everything wrong. And as much progress as we've made, it's going to take a little bit of time for every American to feel that economic boom, which we really do believe is coming. We believe that we're on the front end of it, but we also recognize that we've got a lot of work to do to undo the damage that Joe Biden did to the American economy. And the last one I'll say, Matt, is let's be honest, it's not just Joe Biden. As much as I think Joe Biden was one of the most disastrous presidents of American history, we had a policy in this country for 40 years of shipping American jobs overseas and hiring foreign workers instead of American workers. That has caused the economic stagnation of the American middle class. There was one bright spot in 40 years, and that was the first Trump administration, and there's going to be a massive exception to that 40-year trajectory of American decline, and that's the second Trump administration. We just got to keep it going.
Right. So now we're a year removed from you and President Trump winning a massive electoral victory in November 2024, and we're just a couple of months since our friend Charlie Kirk was brutally murdered by a radical leftist. But at the same time, we are seeing some, whether it's inside Congress, outside Congress, some divisions in the MAGA movement, and I get it that there's this issue, that issue, whatever. What would be your message to how to reunify this movement for the fights ahead, whether it's the midterm elections, 2028 and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have to remember that we have a lot more in common than we do not in common. And that the disagreements that animate the Republican Party, while they matter and they're important, I think these debates should happen. They should happen in podcasts, and they should happen in the media, they should happen on the op-ed pages. It's totally reasonable for the people who make up this coalition to argue about what our foreign policy should be, what our specific tax policy should be, what our housing policy should be. I mean, I had a meeting just yesterday that was focused in the West Wing about how do we get housing more affordable for young Americans because of all the things that got completely out of control under the Biden administration. You had homes that doubled or tripled in price depending on the geography in 4 years under the Biden administration. We've got to solve that problem for our young people so they can afford to buy homes, start families, and actually build their own American dream. So I think my attitude is let these debates play out. But don't let the debates that we're having internally blind us to the fact that we are up against a radical leftist movement that murdered my friend a couple of months ago and that would throw many people in the Trump administration in prison, not for doing anything illegal, but for not following the far left's agenda. That is the real opponent here. A political movement in this country that has no animating principle, that has no agenda for the American people. Their sole obsession is to take down Donald Trump and anybody who helped Donald Trump govern. Focus on the enemy, have our debates, but focus focus on the enemy so that we can win victories that matter for the American people. That's my message.
Right. So now, one of the things that powered your guys' victory, I think, a year ago was a political realignment in this country, where we're seeing working class people shift to the Republican side, and the Democrats, frankly, are becoming the party of the rich. There was a new report that our partners here that put on this event, CGCN, published a couple of weeks ago called "Class Dismissed 2." And in this report, they go into detail about how some of the numbers on this political realignment. 75%, more than 75%. Of the top 30 income congressional districts are represented by Democrats. Yep. That's a totally new thing. The last 3 presidential elections, the Democrats counties were represented more than 60%, in the case of the 2020 election, more than 70% of aggregate GDP in this country. President Trump won counties 30-something% in each of those elections. So your thoughts on what we're seeing now with this political realignment of those statistics?
So let me say a few things, Matt. So first of all, I think that part of what you see as division in the Republican Party is a consequence of this realignment. We have a new governing coalition. We have a new political coalition. We have people who didn't used to vote Republican, and frankly, they have different preferences sometimes on certain issues than maybe the Ronald Reagan or George W. Bush Republican Party did. I think the Donald Trump Party is a fundamentally new phenomenon in American politics. I think that it can govern the country successfully for the next generation, but some of those divisions you talk about are just a natural outgrowth of the fact that we've got a lot of working class voters who frankly don't care what was Republican orthodoxy 25 years ago, and so they're pushing the party in a different direction. And again, I think that debate is natural and normal, and it's something that we should frankly lean into, recognizing that the far left is really the problem we have to confront in this country. The second thing that I'll say about it, Matt, is I think it's a great thing. You know, and I'm biased. Obviously, I grew up in a working class family. I was raised by the kind of people who were blue dog Democrats, socially conservative Democrats in the 80s and 90s, and have turned hard towards Donald Trump's Republican Party. These are the people who built America's greatest icons, who built America's greatest buildings, who drive our food into the grocery store every day. They are the human beings who actually make this country run. I'm proud of them, and I want to keep the Trump coalition together. That's one of the things that we have to do in 2026. And this is my third point, and this is tough. Because one of the things that was true of the Democratic coalition in, say, the 1990s is that because the Democratic coalition in the 90s was more upscale, they showed up, the Republican coalition in the 1990s was more upscale, they showed up in midterms. So Republicans tended to do a little bit better in midterm elections in the 1990s than, say, Republicans do today. And that's because while these working class voters are great, there are also people who don't necessarily show up to vote in the midterms all the time. We've got to motivate them. We've got to get them out to vote. I think it's one of the lessons that we learned in Virginia and New Jersey is that when Donald Trump is not on the ballot, you've got to give people something to actually believe in, something to be inspired by to get out there and vote. They're not going to vote just because you have an R next to your name. You've got to speak to this new working class coalition. And the one worry that I have when I look at so many of our great congressional allies, I do think that some of our folks in Congress, they want to go back to the Republican Party of 20 years ago. That Republican Party was a Republican Party that lost and that couldn't successfully govern the country. We need to lean into this new coalition, do a better job serving them, and that's how we get them to show up in these midterm elections so that we can win not just presidential races, but midterm races too.
Right. Okay, so you mentioned George W. Bush at the beginning of that answer. Now, there's a lot of news going on out there. Today is a somber day for the Bush family and for your predecessor, former Vice President Dick Cheney, who passed away. Today's his funeral. So I wanted to see if you have any thoughts on our message to the Cheney family. I know there was some misreporting out there about whether or not you were invited to that or whatever, but outside of that, there's also another big report that came out a couple of days ago about how George W. Bush and the people around him are plotting for retaking the Republican Party from President Trump and you down the road and going back to the old way of doing things. I guess they don't like to win, but the point is that that's out there. So any response to that as well?
Well, first of all, my condolences go to Dick Cheney and his family. Obviously, there are some political disagreements there, but he was a guy who served his country. We certainly wish his family all the best in this moment of grieving. On the issue of George W. Bush, I mean, look, as you know, Matt, I don't put stock in any story that doesn't come from Matthew J. Boyle at Breitbart News, so this could be totally fake news. But I definitely think, and you already see this, you saw this in 2020, you're going to see it in 2025 and 2026, there is an effort to try to wrest control of the Republican Party away from the voters and away from the coalition that really delivered the big victory in 2024. I think it's a huge mistake. Look, the American people don't want stupid wars and America's jobs going overseas and wide open borders. That is, whether intentional or not, that was the legacy of the Republican Party that came before Donald J. Trump. I'm glad the president got us away from that Republican Party. It lost, but it was also a disaster for the United States of America.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break, come back, and we'll join the VP again at this Breitbart speech in just 2 minutes. Thanks for joining us again, and we're going to go back to the Vice President's speech at this Breitbart conference.
Have an economic policy that's about building in the United States of America rather than shipping all of our jobs overseas and getting Wall Street enriched in the process. Let's have an economic policy that's about more self-sufficiency. I mean, I have 3 kids. I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. I don't want to wake up in a country where I take my kid to the doctor and they can't get antibiotics because the antibiotics that were invented in the United States of America are manufactured in some foreign country. That is the legacy of the Republican Party that came before Donald J. Trump. We're not going back to it.
Okay, so now you mentioned the foreign policy and the deals that we're seeing around the world. One of the things that's been the hallmark here of President Trump's second term, again, we're 10 months to the day since the inauguration, has been these deals. We were going to try to do this event last month, but I know you got called over to Israel on the Gaza deal.
Sure.
So give us kind of and by the way, we have in the audience here today, I know that there are ambassadors from at least 2 places. The European Union ambassador and the Taiwanese ambassador are here. Walk us through how President Trump has approached these various big picture deals, because I mean he's got more than I think 85% of world GDP now in trade deals with the United States, and he's I lost count of how many peace deals he's done this year.
Yeah, well, greetings to the ambassadors. We're thrilled to have you, of course, and greetings to everybody else, including even the fake news. I'm sure is reporting there in the back.
There's a lot of fake news.
I'm sure
they're all lined up.
I'm sure there are. I can see their fake news eyes peering up at me. I'm sure, ready to misreport everything that I've said today. But no, we love you guys too. Kind of. So here's the thing about the president's negotiating style. And I actually, we were a little delayed because the president called me right before I got on stage just about one of these deals that we're working on. And what I love about it is that it's never enough. right? And so you bring him a deal, and he sort of asks for this, and this. We want this tariff rate. We want this country to drop their tariff barriers. We want this country to drop their non-tariff barriers. And you say, I'm never going to be able to get that done. And then you get it done, and you bring it to him, and he said, well, I want 3 other things too. Because his attitude is he wants to get the best deal possible for the American people. And for too long, we had trade negotiators that so believed in the fake idea of free trade over fair trade that they were willing to sell American workers down the river without actually negotiating on the interests of American workers. And so whether it's with China or India or any of the countries that we struck deals, the basic principle is we want Americans to have better access to their markets. We believe in our workers. We think that we have the best products in the world. We want to be able to sell them everywhere. That's number one. Number two, we don't want foreign products to undercut the wages of American workers. We're actually going to protect our markets, protect our important industries, and that's a very important part of the Trump trade plan. And you've seen it happen in a lot of different ways. And then the final thing, and this raises your point about Gaza or any of these other foreign deals, is we've been able to use the incredible economic leverage of the United States of America. I mean, we're 25%, probably a little bit more than that, of the world GDP. Why don't we ever use our economic leverage to achieve peace? Because when countries aren't fighting each other, when they're actually using their economic talents to manufacture good things rather than weapons to kill each other, then that actually creates incredible economic opportunities for Americans. And that's what the president, that's why he's so focused on peace. He's fundamentally a humanitarian, and we've got 8 peace deals at this point. We're working on number 9 and number 10. And I think that, if he gets number 10, purely for mathematical harmony, if he gets to 10, the Nobel Prize should be awarded to Donald J. Trump, even though he certainly earned it with the first 8. But I also think that there's this sense that while he wants to save lives, he also sees a world where people are engaging in commerce with one another rather than killing one another. And he just, he's a tough guy, but he's not a violent human. Like he's not a person, who I think understands violence at a sort of fundamental level. It's like, why don't you stop killing each other and start trading with one another? Why, rather than Russia and Ukraine killing one another, why don't they actually engage in some commerce with one another, travel between the two countries, engage in some sort of cultural exchange? That is his fundamental perspective that he takes into these things. And fundamentally, if we get more peace in the world, it's good for American workers, it's good for the American people, and the president's going to keep on pursuing peace. He's done very well so far, but he's going to keep on working at it.
Yeah, so there's a lot I want to pack into this next question. So one of the things what we've seen, I think, since your guys' victory last year, the whole world over, everybody I've talked to around the world, really seems to have rallied to President Trump's vision on things like trade and immigration. I just saw, and particularly with regard to China and how we need to have a better deal with regard to there, and we just saw the president get back from there.
Yep.
I just saw comments that Pope Leo made about immigration. He said, just the other day, we did a huge story on it on Breitbart last night, that every country should get to decide, I'm paraphrasing him here, every country should get to decide who gets to come in. I mean, that's amazing to see that from the Pope himself. Sure. Your thoughts on more broadly how President Trump really does seem to have electrified the world and woke them up to these major issues that we're talking about here?
Yeah. Well, Matt, I'm a devout Catholic, so I follow those comments closely, including on, of course, Breitbart.com. And that's my 3rd Breitbart shout-out. I've done pretty good, right? That's not bad. Okay, thank you guys. But it's interesting because you may not know it, judging purely from the comments of some people on social media, but the Catholic Church's views on this are actually quite clear. And it's that, yes, you must treat immigrants humanely. On the other hand, every nation has the right to control its borders, and obviously how you strike that balance is very important, but there's a lot of room there to actually control your own borders for the sake of your own people. One of the things, Matt, that always frustrated me about the immigration debate is that we ignored how open borders were not actually good for the dignity even of the illegal migrants themselves. You had little kids getting sex trafficked. We had 300,000 missing children under the Biden administration that the Mexican drug cartels had brought into our country. you had cartels using, in some cases, 9 and 10-year-old children as drug mules for their activity. Border security is not just good for American citizens, it is the humanitarian thing to do for the entire world. Because when you empower the cartels and when you empower the human traffickers, whether in the United States or anywhere else, you're empowering the very worst people in the world. Now, you've seen this in Europe, you've seen this in a whole host of places, but, you know, it's almost like Europe and America got this idea in their head that to control your border at all was fundamentally, you know, uncompassionate, maybe it was even racist and bad. The president and I reject that wholesale. Putting the interests of your citizens first, it's not some ancillary thing. It is the very purpose of government. I am the American vice president. I wish very good things for the people of Mexico or the people of the United Kingdom or the people of any other country, but my priority, my charge is to look after the people of the United States of America, and you cannot do that if you're flooding the country with a ton of illegal immigrants and the drugs and the crime that they bring.
Yeah, so the last question I've got, please give them applause for that one. That's incredible. Okay, so Mr. Vice President, the last question.
Even the Washington Post applause.
I know, I think they did. So
I got fired.
So Mr. Vice President, the last question I got for you on that note, so is that there's a big discussion right now about healthcare in this country.
Yes.
The ACA subsidies expire at the end of the year. There's a lot of questions about what's going to happen about this. The Democrats shut the government down supposedly over this. But where does this go? What do we do to address healthcare prices and premium prices and so on and so forth? What does that look like? Is it a reconciliation plan? Walk us through what happened.
So what's so crazy about this, Matt, is right before the government shut down, we had a meeting with Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer in the Oval Office.
Is this where they get President Trump gave them the MAGA hats? Yeah.
This is not just that. But the president whispers to one of his personal assistants. They're all very good people, and she kind of runs off. And I think to myself immediately, "Oh, what the hell have I gotten myself into?" And she comes back with 2 Trump 2028 hats to give to Jeffries and Schumer. And then he has the photographer come in and he points at Jeffries as he's holding the Trump 2028 hat. And he's like, he says to the photographer, "Make sure Hakeem gets that. I'm sure he's going to want to use it in his campaign advertisements." And it was like a hysterical moment. But when we got to the serious stuff, and they said, "We really want to address the healthcare problem confronting the American people," the president said, "Well, absolutely. We agree. We want to address the healthcare problem confronting the American people. In fact, you people screwed it up with Obamacare, the Unaffordable Care Act, and now you're coming to us saying, let's fix it. Great. Let's fix it." And then they said, I think they were kind of caught off guard, and they're like, "Well, but we want the fix before we're willing to open up the government." And the president was like, "That's like 3 days from now. You want us to fix American healthcare in the next 3 days, and unless you do it, you're going to shut down the government? How about we open up the government and then work together to fix American healthcare?" And
all right, everyone, we are just about to end our 2-hour show here. We do want to remind you that 9 o'clock, actually, here on WCNC Plus, Eugene and Nick will discuss everything Panthers as they gear up for a Monday night primetime game. We'll see you then, and we'll see you at 11. Thanks for joining us tonight.